Well, Matt, it looks like the Toronto Defiant are continuing to buck this title of underdogs. I think they want to be considered underdogs, but they're not allowed to be anymore, not after that match. Stellar performance from them, no pun intended. The next match is interesting. Two teams, Matt, that are kind of languishing in 16th and 17th places respectively, and now they really need a W, either of them, or both.
I mean,
that's not possible.
Both of these teams struggling. I think they're struggling would be an understatement for the Spark. They looked really good week one, and then since then they've kind of falling apart. I mean, just making really poor decisions.
Is that your
really odd
diagnosis?
Plays? I mean, look, there's no. I mean, that's the nicest way I think you can put it, right? I mean, they have a lot of talent. They just can't seem to get it all together. And then with the Gladiators, you know, they beat the Shock, who we consider a very strong team.
We would put them top flight, right?
Yeah, and they have some other you know, losses. They lose to Paris. They lose to London, and you just don't know where they are right now. You throw Decay into the lineup, you think he provides a little bit of a boost, you know, in terms of his Zarya play compared to Sureform. But we've only seen one game, hasn't resulted in a win. You can't afford to lose here to the Spark.
The fact that these two teams are 16th and 17th out of 20 is actually quite ridiculous. Especially like you said, obviously the Gladiators' performance already. We've seen them go up against the Spark and look quite...
I mean, on paper, talent-wise, these are not the 16 and 17 teams in the league, to be fair.
But they are literally these teams on paper. Literally. So there's much to be worked on there. We've discussed a little bit, and we want to continue the thread of conversation today about the two main tank options for the Hangzhou Spark. I think that's definitely something that's worth bringing up and sort of seeing how that develops over the course of the series.
You know, they do have No Smite and Gushui. They kind of rotate the two in between maps, and they don't really seem to have like a real set strategy in how they're going to do that. You see in team fight first deaths, these are all three of the tanks in this series, as Roar's the main tank for the LA Gladiators. No Smite, you know, that's a great stat, right? No third, does not die a lot at the beginning. Gushui, very aggressive. We know his style of play. We saw it at the Overwatch World Cup, playing a ton of Winston. He's dying a lot first. You know, a lot of those early deaths. Maybe it's a little bit of a communication of him coming into the lineup. You know, everybody does not speak the same language. Very difficult to kind of coordinate with that main tank. You don't know how much that has to do with it.
There's also not a huge difference between sort of first and 11th and then from 11th to last. So just something to keep an eye on and maybe keep in the back of your mind and how the main tanks sort of differ in that regard. But speaking of this team, who knows which one we're going to get up first, ladies and gentlemen. Let's say a big hello to the Hangzhou Spark.
Gladiator.
And here they come. Apparently they're Gladiators too, Matt.
At the home fans are like, yeah! And then they're like, oh wait, hold on, not our time.
But see, this time I did at least call the correct team coming out.
You did a great job.
I'm okay with that.
10 out of 10.
All right, so this team, we've expected more. I think they set very high expectations in week one. You know, Rhea, really strong performance on that D.Va, was already put himself in a top flight D.Va position. Gushui comes in to start off on the control map, maybe no super big surprise. We've seen Adora, we've seen Revenge subbed in at multiple times.
And another standout player, Godspeed, primarily playing Zarya, but has a lot of other damage dealer heroes in his pool. It'll be interesting we see it, especially I think if we do, would probably be early in control.
And now into the arena, folks, walks the Los Angeles Gladiators.
Gladiator, gladiator, gladiator. To fight with the gods and the giant slayer.
Leading the charge is Decay, the player very hyped up. He lived, look, I honestly think he lived up to that sort of expectation in the matchup against London. London looked dynamic, they look completely different as opposed to their first week. Again, there are so many of these matches that we've had to say, wow, this is kind of hard to evaluate, man. It's kind of hard to get a feel for where these teams are at. The Gladiators, I definitely think, are on the upshot here. Roar is an interesting main tank player. His statistics fall very much in the league average. There's nothing that stand out about him, negatively or positively.
Right, and I think when you look at this team as well, Zoe was talking about it on the pre-show with the supports. They need to stay alive. You need to play pretty smart, especially in this meta when a lot of the games are 50-50. It comes down to decision making. You have Big Goose, who's playing your Lucio, likes to do a lot of crazy things off the top of the walls, lots of boosts. You need him to stay alive. You need that sound barrier ultimate, right? So you need to see them play a very smart, organized game.
And we saw the backline of the Spark look a little bit in disarray, especially in that Houston matchup. High expectations on the backline of the Gladiators here. We'll see if they can exploit those kind of weird movements out of this Hangzhou team. Whereas the Spark just need to prove that they're more than average Zhous.
This is such an unpredictable matchup between these two teams. is we expect the Gladiators to end up, in your top 5, let's say, towards the end of the year, right? And we kind of thought the Spark would be up there as well. The Spark potentially, in your top 8, looking at a season playoff. And both of these teams, not performing well thus far. And we talk about it all the time, how you don't have as many matches this season as you did last season. A tough stage where, the Gladiators sit at 1 and 3. It's not like last year where they had a rough stage 1, and then you have all those games to build out of it.
Super nasty.
Yeah, if Fisher's not walking in your door again, changing a lot of those things, right? So at least we don't think that'd be a crazy tournament. But it's just not going to happen this year. So you need to get the ball rolling in the positive direction.
I mean, a small sample size, but after the first match with the Gladiators, Decay's up at about 5th in terms of hero damage per 10 minutes on Zarya. So again, these stats sometimes average out, or they smooth out over the course of a series. Sometimes they just remain solid. Anyway, let's head over and find out exactly what maps we're looking down the barrel of here. Nepal will be our first, then we'll move on to Hollywood, Volskaya. Definitely going to be an interesting one to finish off their Route 66.
As we go into Nepal, a lot of opportunity for some more heavy damage dealing compositions. As Control, this is where we kind of see the most innovation. A lot of the game we see now being played with 3 tanks, 3 supports. This is an opportunity for teams to play otherwise, but I was talking about it on the pre-show. The Spark really don't play a lot of heavy DPS comps. Maybe the Gladiators can take advantage of that.
Strayed away from them, at least.
Yeah, they really...
That's what they were known for. All this hype coming in. Oh, they're Scrim Gods.
They really only play like Sombra, which you usually kind of play Sombra in, whether you call it like a Sombra Goats or some kind of Sombra version of triple tank, triple support.
Very vocal audience to start this one off, and it will be a pretty standard deliver here in the middle of the map as we begin things on Village. Raw! Move backwards, and he's completely eaten up that first death. I don't think the Gladiators really want to do too much more here.
Everybody runs away after that. It's a good opening here for the Spark, and for a team like the Spark, who they do get nervous on stage, I think, when they're faced with some adversity. To get something to go in your way really early, and quite frankly, quite easily, probably pretty good for the confidence up on the stage.
That's what they said in week 2.
Yeah.
Hangzhou sort of reported a little bit of nerves.
Which is weird considering how good they were early on. Like, why be nervous?
Honestly,
like, you come in, you take
after week 1, they probably weren't used to sort of, maybe being so far behind the 8 ball. They were always close matches, or at least they were dominating. Here come the Gladiators. They're going to push up onto the high ground. Rhea from a safe position in the back line, trying to mitigate as much damage as possible, but Buzzy is still taken down. Gushue a little bit low, and that shield is about to crack. Raw's pushing very deep for it, despite being discorded, and still is able to get that kill. And the Gladiators now can rotate through. And good sign for the Gladiators here, Matt. They don't really have to go for any ultimates. They don't have to use any of these huge abilities to maintain control of the point.
And the biggest thing is when Bazzi dies playing Brigitte and Gushue gets low, with just Zen and Lucio, there's not enough burst heals to bring him back to life.
There is no burst heals.
Yeah, when you have Brigitte alive, you can use the repair pack. He's back up to almost near full HP with a Harmony Orb on him. Then you can start to fight back. But with that situation, nothing the Spark could do to keep the main tank up. If you lose 2 players, the fight's already done.
Oh, the rally. That means the Gladiators want to rough and tumble a little bit. Earthshatter connects with Buzzy, but it's going to be the crack back from Gushue. Much nastier. Transcendence being brought into the play here from BB. And it's possible the Spark didn't even really need it. Regardless, though, rotation down on towards the point. And they will claim this one as Big Goose only holds out for a couple of seconds.
I wonder as time goes on with the Spark, how do you end up splitting time with your main tanks? Because we talk about how good Gushue and Nose Smite are. It's almost like the London Spitfire at the beginning of last year, where you had Fissure and Gesture. You weren't playing Fissure at all, but you knew he was talented enough to start. It's like, eventually, are they going to have to decide? Because I think as you start to see, they'll start to get comfortable with one of these players. That'll be the grab from Godspeed, blocking them all inside. So the trance comes on one side of the barrier here as they push on through. They're able to get one, but they do lose Gushue here. You're going to see a rally being invested here by the Spark to make sure everybody's topped up.
I think Gushue was caught out there. He couldn't actually back up because of the self-destruct left in the way by Void. Either way, he was pretty much done. Rhea going to get pressured down. You notice that Decay really wants to try and continue to force Rhea back with that unmitigatable damage. That's a word, I promise you. Graviton Surge catches Rhea and Godspeed here, and Decay will just stand his ground and laser them on down. Hangzhou are at 81%. Definitely only one other fight away from a win. just about time for the Gladiators to come in. Matt, I like this conversation, you know, about Gushue, especially as opposed to No Smite. Gushue actually has the lowest or second lowest first kill rate, so he's often not the instigator or not the guy that's getting credit for that first kill, but has the highest first death rate out of Reinhardt's.
Yeah, but we see that with some other Reinhardts in the league that we do kind of say as successful main tanks. You know, potentially just taking a ton of damage, you know, just leading the fray, just creating chaos for...
Success is relative for a main tank, you know?
It's really easy to look bad on main tank. It's quite difficult to look great at.
I know, I played 2 talent takedowns as main tank, trust me.
What's your record in those?
I'm a big fat goose egg and 2. All right. Gushue to advance here, Transcendence brought in response to the Graviton, no real surprise there. In the midst of it though, the Hangzhou Spark managed to take control of the point. That's not good for the Gladiators, they have to act quick. Ria's knocked down, but the Transcendence was brought in. Void gonna drop a little bit of a presence at the front door. No one taken down by that self-destruct, and Ria is gonna be de-suited at the very least. Gushue wants to push up. Look at Hangzhou at 95% just by taking control early in the fight. Now the Graviton for the Gladiators though, and it is very good timing. Not only do they have control of the point, not only are they 5% away, they even have a shatter if they needed it, but it's unlikely that's going to be the case. Hangzhou try and pressure, but it's not enough.
It just took a little bit long for the Spark. It seems like they were indecisive, whether they decided like to kind of back around the corner after you lose a few players, but with so much percentage for the Gladiators in their favor, there was not going to be another fight after that. So you may as well have gotten aggressive with Gushue and Reinhardt inside of the point and try and take the fight to them. There was not an opportunity for them to just kind of like back around the corner and reset. I mean, maybe you thought you could kind of like juggle the point, wait for players to get back, but it's so risky,
The first
especially
couple
knowing
of
the grab
fights
on the other side.
were really interesting. In fact, there were a couple of situations where Hangzhou, you know, did not want to commit ultimates to the fight. Actually, the first fight that the Gladiators won, Hangzhou had ultimates to use. They just chose not to go for them at all and gave up control of the point. I really want to try and get a look my finger on the tendencies of this team. And we'll see if they start to coalesce a little bit more here.
No Reinhardt here because you have the big death pit. Lucio just run up, just boop him on in. Winston just a lot more mobility. See Roar here, jump up to the high ground. A lot of cleave damage on a lot of the targets on the Spark.
You see the Roar very deliberately stepping back out of Gushue's bubble so he can get a repair pack.
They do get this boop though off of Decay. So Decay off the side of the map. They don't have that Zarya in, so
it's a big source of damage missing.
Yeah, and a lot of protection as well, right? No bubbles to keep players like Hydration or Roar alive.
See, Roar's trying to play passively around a corner as a result. He has the Orb of Harmony.
Yeah.
Here's the push in though. Notice the Orb of Discord on Gushue right now, and as long as line of sight is maintained by Shavs, that will stay on him. Looks like the Gladiators, though, after losing Decay, they didn't fancy another stage.
And I think that's where you would see other teams get really aggressive with the speed boost and push on through, but the Spark play that a little bit passive. They allow these players to linger around. They don't get like a full team fight win as Shaz will use Transcendence. As Gushue was putting some damage from behind. He just wanted to stay alive, get to the point with that.
Yeah, I mean, it might have looked a bit strange because Gladiators got a pretty easy pick off on Ria, who was out of position. Raw can return to the fray quite happily. If he needs another jump, he can always use his ultimate. Primal Rage will give him the reset there. Now, the issue is that Hangzhou was stalling out the point pretty well. And Godsby is just, you know, accepting the fact that he's going to lose his life in his charge, but he gets a couple of extra %. He gets, you know, closer towards his next Graviton, which will be available in the next fight.
I mean, because of that first death to Decay early, he's going, he's doubling him up right now, right? Godsby gets the grab in this fight, potentially use it quite early, try and build towards another one. You think you use grab, you probably win it. Transcendence was used from the Gladiators as the 2 support ults here for the Spark and Graviton Surge. Could be a pretty good fight for them.
Los Angeles playing catch-up right now, still behind in percentage and need to keep control at this point. That's the Transcendence being brought in by Baby. Raw hoping for some environmental kills here, but it's IDK that actually comes up with it. Void over the edge. Missing that Diva. Baby does eventually be called to atone for his sins, and Buzzy's life is saved by the sound barrier brought by IDK. Now Raw will still chase up that Brigitte kill, and Buzzy doesn't get away. The Gladiators still remain in control. The point being contested right now, and at this stage, Big Goose is forced off. He's chased down and removed by Gushue, so the Spark at least get the point back, but there's still 4 players making 3 hydration over the edge now as well. Gushue really giving quite the account of himself in this fight, forcing Los Angeles back. That's his 3rd. That's brutal, man.
And that's why we talked about, you know, how good his Winston play is. Uses Primal Rage, gets back to the point, just like juggles Big Goose off of it into the small room, and they're able to flip the point back. He gets the elimination on the Big Goose, turns around, gets one on a hydration, then chases it up, takes out Roar. And they don't even use the Graviton Surge during that fight. You know, Decay gets his now. the grab will come in from
Oh,
Gutsby.
man.
Connect with a few at the door here.
We saw this happen to Fisher yesterday. Reba 2. Raw getting caught in between the play once more. He tries to dive on the point. The spark initiate on the right-hand side. But there's nothing Raw could do to actually rejoin his team.
And this is one of the, if you don't play the choke and have advantage of the point, like where do you really use this Graviton Surge? Because everybody can spread out here on the Spark, where you're not going to get like some crazy like 3 or 4 player grab unless the fight extends on the point for a very long time.
You have to force Hangzhou onto the point here. And the Gladiators need to contest the point anyway. 90% to 45, Graviton let rip. And Decay should be pretty happy with that one. 3 players were caught in it. Self-destruct doesn't claim any foes, but Rhea goes careening off the edge of the map. 45%. The Spark are going to get pushed off the point now, and the Gladiators, not a moment too soon for them. They regain control, but at what cost?
They get a good grab. They did force action onto the point. They connect with 4 players with that Graviton Surge. Able to take the fight. So now you have Transcendence for both teams. It'll be the Gladiators with a rally, which will keep them a little bit more topped up, but Gushui with these Primal Rages, we'll see if he's able to just pick off any kills, some knockoffs.
Raw very low, is forced to use Primal Rage to get away, or at least to look that way. No, we just jumped off, it was Gushui going for the Primal. Transcendence now with the Gladiators actually just trying to work onto the fringes of this fight. They're not fully committing into the Transcendence of Bebe. That should help them out, but he's a sound barrier. It's a little bit too late to keep Hydration alive though, but Big Goose really trying to force people out of position here.
And Hydration tried to back up to the point, but Gushui just body blocked it, didn't allow him to get back to the rest of his team. It's a Graviton Surge from Godspeed. Next with 1 is, this will be a rally used from Bazzi, so trying to put the Spark over the top here at the end.
The Gladiators have to disengage somewhat, but they can't fully give control. Hydration didn't have a grapple, I suppose, to get back onto the point. Now Raw has no choice but to try and stall Primal Rage. This is a good position for it, but the Spark are playing very canny here, not allowing themselves to be knocked up. Buzzy almost goes over, but he had a shield bash to reposition in case he needed it. And here's Shaz now bringing the Transcendence onto the point, but Gushui, big brain play, trying to get to the backside and pressure Decay down to switch to the Soldier 76. Self-destruct around the corner, it claims Godspeed. His eye is missing. Decay in a pretty safe spot right now, and Hydration about to bring the pain on the point. Decay on the flank, looking for Bebe, being pressured from the backside, and IDK chases down the Super Soldier. Hydration taken down by the self-destruct. What a back and forth affair, it's one apiece.
Towards the end, it was starting to look good for the Spark, and then just the stall comes out from the Gladiators. The Spark not able to flip the point. You thought for a second maybe Void self-destruct, they would have cleared out the point. Would have been able to just end overtime there, but Spark turned back. Really smart play from Gushui when he sees Decay come out on Soldier 76. He jumps right on him, just forces him in, because Soldier 76 from range could just put so much pressure, just like consistent damage. Like Soldier doesn't do a ton of damage, it's just that consistent damage over time that really bothers.
Especially when the opposition's attention is taxed to such a degree that they can't deal with it.
They have to focus the point.
What happened though, Void had to peel for Decay. And so effectively, Gooseray was able to hold the attention of 2 Gladiators players and effectively split the team. So it all comes down to this one last round here on Shrine. First map going to be very important in terms of momentum going forward, especially knowing how much Hangzhou benefit from that.
Oh, it's a great point. I was just going to say that you know, the map win here would be big, obviously, for the Gladiators, you know, to go up 1-0 in a series. But it's even bigger for the Spark. Like, they have not been able to get any type of momentum early in these series. They always look great in Game 4. The issue is they've lost the first 3 games before they get to Game 4. So you win this first game, you start to build some momentum, get some confidence back like they had in Week 1.
This is where it all happens. They start off the round the right way. 10% already accrued on the point.
Roar does a ton of damage, though, in the first fight. I mean, already at a shatter.
He was in the thick of it, yeah. He was definitely swinging. We did see him get bubbled early on in the fight.
This is where you can see how good
he's already that half.
Tracking. Yeah.
He actually wanted to push him with that speed boost, but now he gets caught out of position a little bit too far from Raw. No chance to use that Earth Shatter either. IDK, fortunate not to get lasered down. It would at least have been a trade for the Gladiators, but it looks like they're going home with very little. It's like trick-or-treating and get given a bag of peanuts instead of the Snickers.
So Gushui now has his own Shatter here. We'll see now, Shatter versus Shatter. They did a nice job, like you mentioned, IDK using the boot to set that up. Taking out Roars. You do have Rhea up here on the high ground. Just gonna kind of spot check here. It sees everybody coming from the Gladiators. It's gonna back up to the point.
That Earth Shatter still sat there for Raw. Again, he wants to be able to push up with that speed boost, but he can't look down a half again. You can see he's definitely being focused on. And now the Spark might have taken the initiative away from the Gladiators here. They want to get aggressive Raw with that Earth Shatter. The only connection was on towards Buzzy there, but he had the rally going already. He'll be topped up pretty comfortably. Gushue caught out, knocked down. Here's the Graviton just to save him. Both teams going for it, but Rhea self-destruct is in the middle. Knock back, and that's two. Raw now doesn't have his catapult to send him into the fray. The Lucio is down, and so is Decay.
And there's really only been 2 fights on this point, but we're already at 85% for the Spark. Ult's invested heavy on both teams from that fight. But the Spark gonna get closer here towards this Transcendence. Maybe already at 69% and counting.
Raw again, taking so much damage before the engagement. They have to go now, the Gladiators, this is their last chance. Tentatively, they try and keep the point contested, but they must commit to keep this run going. And so they push up. Already knocked away is Raw, and he's going very, very low. The Transcendence just helping out at IDK. Puts the cherry on top. Hydration shield bashes backwards to try and avoid, but the Gladiators are no closer to capturing this point than they were at the start of this fight. Gushue is down at least the 1-for-1 trade, but the Graviton gonna wrap the Gladiators up and put a nice bow on it. Big Goose now has to stall. Hydration pushing forward, supports and a Transcendence. Trying to keep this one going. Godspeed is an Orb of Harmony. There's not enough damage there from Hydration to at least put a scratch on the Spark. Again, Raw has taken so much damage. I'm starting to sound like a broken record here. He gets knocked aside. His shield was broken anyway. And they're looking to run down the rest of the Gladiators. They've done it. Nepal to Hangzhou.
And IDK and Rhea set up the beginning of that. IDK boots Roar to the side, and then Rhea on D.Va flies in, puts him over in a position he's not able to fight out of as the Spark take map number 1. We'll see you after the break.
The Overwatch League is powered by Intel. Game, record, stream without compromise on Intel Core i7. And by Omen by HP, the official PC and display of the Overwatch League.
Safe to say, if you're a home team fan, this game is not going the way you would have liked it to. So far, Hangzhou strong out of the gates. Godspeed versus Decay in the head-to-head.
Not close.
Weak.
one final blow in favor of Decay is about all he's got to talk about there. The hero damage, high energy kills, the average energy, time alive, everything there favors Godspeed. Where if you get that type of performance and then you get Gushui playing well, this is going to be a very tough series for the Gladiators to win. You need Decay in only his second game to really pick it up here.
Credit to Decay for having 2/3 of the damage of Godspeed, despite only having half the time in life.
Yeah,
He's out there. He's out there trying to get it done. They just need him to be around for a little bit longer. They're less than a minute on average for him, whereas Godspeed, again, he's living that sort of mid-late fight fantasy as Zarya nice and charged up.
And something that we talked about in the pregame when we were going over all of the tanks, though obviously the Gladiators playing Roar, nobody else coming in that role, but Gushui and No Smite. For the Spark, they're going to stick with Gushui here for map number 2. So usually you see them kind of sub some of these players in and out. They're going to stick with Gushui. He's playing well, going to roll him out here on Hollywood.
Don't you think this is a good idea for a team that's trying to find their identity?
Yeah, I mean, making a decision is better than indecision, right? So I think just seeing them commit to something is better than just seeing them just kind of throwing stuff everywhere. Because even as a player, like, you start getting subbed in and out, you see everybody else getting subbed in and out, you start looking around like, okay, does anyone have any clue what's going on here? Like, start questioning everything.
Matt Morello, deeper thoughts than the Marinara's trench.
Sometimes it's not that deep. Sometimes, it's just kind of how it is on face value, right?
No need to overcomplicate things.
No, that's for Sideshow.
Over the top side. Israel take a little bit of early damage, but getting the decent on Void means the damage trades have been decent, but Godspeed had to commit himself to that one. And yes, the Gladiators, they smell that blood in the water.
I mean, without Zarya, it's a lot of damage, right? You're going to get Void back in the fight. It's just, before you see Godspeed return, so...
You're on a roll today, man.
Hydration doing a ton of damage to Rhea, but he makes it back towards the health pack.
Oh, Raw!
I thought Rhea lives through that, by the way.
Well, he was getting slapped around, but it was more of like a pool noodle than it was an actual mace. Shaz is, well, in trouble there.
But they allow Rhea to just turn the corner and then go up to the high ground, and he kind of runs at everybody else for the Gladiators, and they're just too busy fighting on the point.
More importantly, Raw must have missed the memo, because he was the only Gladiators player that I could see that didn't sort of try and follow up on Rhea there, and he was pulled down by about 5 Hangzhou Spark players on the point. I don't think that's an exaggeration. Grabs, though, up for both Zaryas here. See, it's crazy what Decay can do when he stays alive. Bebe has that Transcendence, so Shaz is just a little bit behind in that
He'll get it, though. Before this next fight kicks off, he's going to earn that ability. So I think it's just, do they know that Gushui's very close to his Shatter? He's going to be able to build it up rather quickly with some of his damage that comes down.
Raw just getting displaced every which way, and he will eventually go down. It's safe to say he's being targeted. Buzzy also going to be switched out here. The Shaz with the Transcendence now into the grab, but it won't last the entire duration, which necessitates the sound barrier to be brought in now from Big Goose, and it works out. They stay alive. IDK really trying to get the extra damage. He's punished for overextending. And Gushui is missing. He was actually around the backside. Void is just sneaking around there with that Diva, and Hydration was backing him up. On the high ground is Godspeed, and that's exactly where Decay is being speed boosted in. They're just going to charge through this barrier and get rid of the Zarya as quickly as possible. And now it's just a trickle from the Spark.
Yeah, this first point will go to the Gladiators. The Spark will back up. They're both grabs used. Decay now building towards his second. It'll be interesting if we see for the Spark, Mitch. The Sombra worked really well when we saw London go up against the Gladiators. I wonder if we see them come out with some kind of Sombra play of their own. As we talked about, they do play Sombra. Like, if you see any damage dealers for the Spark, it usually is Sombra. So I wonder if we see them bring it out.
Earth Shatter, nothing doing with that one. Sound barrier now for the Spark, and they start to push back. Big Goose felled, and Hydration just charging in to see if he can find something. But there it is, an attempt at initiating, and it does seem that Raw is maybe not singing in the same key as the rest of his team.
Which you'd think, bringing Decay in, a former teammate, you'd kind of have some better synergy, right? They try and use the Shatter there, coming around the corner, maybe trying to catch the Spark off guard. Results in nothing, though. You have a big combo coming up here, though, for the Gladiators. You have the grab plus the self-destruct. Here's going to be the Graviton Surge, self-destruct up in the sky. It's a pin there. Connector one.
Right in the back there, Gushui taken down. Helped set up that one by Hydration, I believe. Just getting in there with a bash. IDK is just going to be heading for the hills right now. And Bebe ain't getting out of this one alive. And the Gladiators now take a Transcendence into the next fight, which is just as well, because Hangzhou will have an unanswered grab. Oh, that's filthy. It's just filthy. Clean it off the screen. My God. Ugh.
That was gross.
Yeah, man. Hold on to your man bun, Shaz. It's about to be a bumpy ride, my dude.
Man bun.
Yeah, he does. Doesn't he?
No.
That's Big Goose with a man bun. Shaz just has a schleck back. And the Godfather. And the granddaddy of Zens. The Transcendence is going to be required of him. Let's see what he has on today, the day of his daughter's wedding. Here's the Earthshatter coming in, and well, Gushue doesn't really find too much with that one here. Godspeed! Oh, his grab is eaten by Void. Everything going right for the Gladiators early on in this fight. It looks like it's only going to get better. Void over the top, pressuring Godspeed down. He is healed up with a Transcendence, and now the self-destruct coming over the top from Rhea. Decay actually caught out by that one. He must have had a shield available, or maybe he couldn't predict the trajectory of that self-destruct, and now the swing goes back in favor of Hangzhou. Raw caught out of position once again. Shaz, not much more he can do.
Oh, that's a tough one to lose. In a fight where Void eats the Graviton Surge, you lose any type of big combo for the Spark. To come back and connect with Decay, who he was pretty charged up. He was building towards yet another Graviton Surge here. To lose him, that's massive. But you invested into that fight. You know, you had a Void make a great play to eat that grab, and you got nothing.
Frustration surely building up for the Gladiators now with only 1 minute left. And pretty, well, it's not an ideal setup for Old Economy. If Shaz gets that Transcendence, they're probably feeling a lot better, and he should in the coming moments. Decay pushing forward. I think this is pretty telegraphed. The Spark can see that Decay's ready to rumble, and there's the grab pat.
Self-destruct. Sound barrier comes down, though, keeping some players stopped up. So it'll be the Shadow that comes in from Gushue. Now it's going to come down from Roars.
Gushue knocked down, separated from the rest of his team, stunned up in a position where he can't actually benefit from the Transcendence. Fantastic job by the Gladiators to manage Gushue's position, continually displacing Murray from what would have been a clutch Transcendence. It didn't work out for Baby. He must be mad about that one. Now it's just Godspeed left. And all he can do is try and charge up his next Graviton as quickly as he can. He goes down. IDK found Shaz. All he can do is stall, and that will be that. 14 seconds on the clock where the Gladiators get to the final stretch.
But I tell you what, a minute and 40 seconds here to get from point B to point C is not a lot of time. You know, you're going to have 2 really long fights here if you're the Spark and hold them from completing the map. I mean, you wouldn't feel too horrible about that going into your offensive side.
The Gladiators definitely feel like they can probably snowball this. If they knew that Baby and IDK, and they probably do have an idea about this, how low they are in ult %. Great denial of the high ground by Big Goose there. Really takes the initiative away from the Spark.
And let's see if they use the rally to engage, right? They use rally, they speed boost in. They have an idea, there's not a lot of ultimates. Look, this is going to create space. The Spark have to back up.
Yeah, they're more than happy expending an ultimate by the looks of things to gain this position. Yeah. Now the Spark have to sort of creep in very carefully. Baby, though, got about 60% of his Transcendence in that previous engagement, even though there were no kills. So he would be happy with that. Now the Spark are looking a little bit better in this economy. And they'll propel themselves forward. It's a rally from Buzzy this time. Gushue wanted to rumble. Both teams just using that ult to aggressively posture.
That's where the Lucio speed boost going backwards pays off, as don't want to take that fight against a team rallying at you, but this has allowed the Spark to build up some ultimates here. You do have a lot coming on board here.
Take it down.
Not able to get there with the Transcendence.
Baby just has to stand there awkwardly now, and he realizes he's going to back up with the rest of his team, but Buzzy wasn't protected by Gushue's shield. The Gladiators barrel forward. The goal, they can see it right in front of them. So close they can almost touch it, and they're happy to go straight through the Spark to get there. IDK being corralled off onto the side by Big Goose. He brings a sound barrier into the fight, but it's only he and Godspeed the benefit. Godspeed on the Tracer, forced into a recall back towards his spawn. IDK back out again, booped forward by Void and removed. Buzzy going for the ice block here. Classic stall maneuver around the wall. We'd love to see that. Buzzy eventually taken down. Vic will be smiling, I know that for sure. But in overtime, it's just Rhea on the payload with a Discord Orb. Not a great combination for him. Self-destruct to clear up the space a little bit for the Gladiators, Matt. And they get home.
It was just a matter of time, Ben, as it's unfortunate to contest the point. Godspeed needs to switch off of Zarya when he had the grab. He dies early in the previous fight, not able to get there with the Transcendence to keep him up. So you never get a final use of that Graviton Surge. So everything falls apart there on defense. The Gladiators complete their offensive side of the map.
What's your take on that? Generally speaking, it's just a fairly long map, so even finishing the map, the Gladiators are probably pleased with this result.
Yeah, I would say so. I think, you know, they feel pretty good about potentially, like, I think a lot of teams, you know, statistically, they get point A. It's really like from A to B that's very tough through
that
like
Wild West
phase. And then it's even tougher because usually when you complete that, you don't have a ton of time left, like 1:40, like how the Gladiators had. It's really difficult to get to the full completion of the map. So completing the full map is huge from the Gladiators. We see so many teams get like 2 and like, you know, 99% of the way there and just get stopped right outside of the spawn.
But at least the Hangzhou Spark know exactly what they have to do. They need to try and finish things off. Next Tuesday, kickoff at 7. Defiant versus the Hunter. That's going to be a great match between two teams who refuse to fit the mold. It's going to be on Twitch, ESPN3, and Disney XD. Love to see that. Please join us for that. It's going to be fantastic. I guarantee it'll be worth watching. Now the Spark here, IDK probably won't be seeing too much Widowmaker from here.
Maybe just peeking real quick.
Yeah, sleep dart as well. Anything you can throw out of spawn to potentially catch an enemy off guard is like a Widow, sleep dart, something like that. I'm more than happy to try it. We expect to see a Reinhardt-based 3-3, and that's what we're going to be getting.
Both teams going to run the same thing here as that we saw in the last half, so.
My ultimate is charging.
Yeah, Goucher with a Fire Strike already at 20%, so caught a few players that were up on the high ground. And the Gladiators, no fear. They run right at the Spark. You get a kill on Namazi here first. Now, Godspeed getting pretty charged up, trying to back out here. Discord art on him, just gonna, doesn't have his own bubble yet, just trying to break the line of sight, get that off of him. Ooh, hydration.
Oh! Caught out by that one. Now the Gladiators probably need to take...
They boot Roar back towards him as well. Roar very low here.
Roar about as subtle as a sledgehammer, but still has the same destructive potential. He's gonna get caught here, there's no chance of getting away! Oh! Tell you what, top of his head getting singed by that Fire Strike, and Goucher bounding towards the point, knowing that the Spark had an opening.
Goucher gets the credit there, but IK with 2 boops to keep pushing Roar back towards their spawn. And those kills may result in the Spark taking point A. It could be huge.
A team as strategic as the Gladiators, credited with a great bamboozle. Overextending like that is so uncharacteristic, but once again, they drop down, and the Transcendence from Bebe was not enough to keep Buzzy alive. Still, this fight in the Spark yet. Godspeed's pretty close to that Graviton Surge. Rhea, though, being pressured down very heavily. Decay doesn't want to peek over the edge too far, though, lest he give up his own life. But Bebe, he's caught out. Nice job, Decay, surgically extracting the Zenyatta from the Spark.
You get close with the Spark, but not enough. I feel like that's one of the few times, at least early, where we've seen, you know, maybe just use that Transcendence just a second late. Somebody drops, not able to keep them alive with that Zenyatta ult, so.
Well, a sigh of relief for the Gladiators is their overextension prior doesn't actually yield the point. However, with only 1 tick left, Matt, they can't really step off the point for too long. Which means that they're forced to use ultimates earlier on in the fight, which is maybe what the Spark want them to do. Force out some of these 4 key ultimates, or soon to be 5. Here's the grab, pretty early in the fight. The Gladiators aren't afraid to dig deep in the pockets for the resources here. And it pays off.
And there's absolutely nothing that Goucher can do to defend against that. When we see the self-destruct go up in the sky, he's got Roar on one side, who he knows has Shatter, and then you have Hydration playing Brigitte on the other side. So it's like, well, I either turn towards the Brig to defend myself real quick, and then up in the sky and I get shattered from behind, or I look towards Roar, and then I get bashed from the Brig from the other side. Really nothing he can do to protect his team.
Must be frustrating, but we're quite sure the Goucher's been on the other side of that particular battle as well. Earthshatter, Godspeed knocked down, they'll be looking for him. He had a Graviton Surge. He won't be using it in this fight, though. Transcendence now with the Gladiators just to roll this one in. And I suppose, you know, this is a form of enforced ult economy by the Gladiators. They're preventing the Spark from using ults, and then they can bank them up for this next fight.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not what you want if you're the Spark, right? But no, they're saving grace as they have the advantage. Little cheeky flank here. You may get grabbed, though, all up in the spot.
Calls on the stage there. Gladiators fans waiting for that little cheeky flank. Doesn't quite work, though. Rhea is low. Doesn't force the rally out of Bazzi, but this is quite a cheap advancement for the Spark, to be honest. Climbing that tech tree.
Just rally here. Used for the Spark, so.
Another little cheeky strap for the Gladiators doesn't pay off, and It would have been that fight of the next that would have been Hangzhou's last chance. They're still forced to lose about 3.5 minutes to get point A, and we talked about how long this map is, man.
And all it takes here is for the Gladiators to win like 2 fights, it goes into overtime, and then when you get that point B, you have like very little time left to actually complete the map. So it's looking pretty good for the Gladiators here, although you see the ultimate advantage in favor of the Spark. The Gladiators want to play close up. They want to see them invest some of these ults out early. It's a big grab. Nothing else going to be invested here for the Gladiators. They knew that fight was pretty much a loss as soon as the grab came out.
Now, Rhea sees the hydration was very low, so he boosts forward and throws a quick melee out. Cheaply won fight. The Spark need more of these.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of looks weird and sounds weird. The intended fight there for the Gladiators is to lose it, but they get a ultimate like the Graviton Surge out. Now you come back, you can start to build a little bit of advantage. 2 support ults, Graviton Surge, Self-Destruct, Earth Shatter. You can win this fight, then the clock starts to go in your favor.
Both teams want to be frugal with those ultimates if they can, but now they're both just splashing out. Hydration just got caught in that one. Oh, yes! Cowabunga, says Void, and the Earth Shatter was there. Nicely set up by Roy to set that one up. By Void, should I say. That's, yeesh. Yeah, well, it hurts. We've seen plenty of those before. Still, though, look at those low percentage numbers on the side of the Gladiators. That means they've used a lot of ults.
It's almost going to be the same exact thing that we saw when they played close to the choke. They know that Godspeed is probably close to the grab. They're going to come in with this. Maybe if you're lucky for the Gladiators, they invest Rally as well. They really want to double down and win the fight. You extend the fight out a little bit if you're LA. You lose it. You come back now with your own ultimates right before they take point B and you win.
Raw's shield already broken. He's forced to put it away for a little bit. The last thing you want is Reinhardt, your shield be broken to force you to go aggressive. Raw wants a shield right now. Might have a chance to save his team. He does, though. Raw may give his life up for it. He's burst healed very briefly there with a sound barrier coming in. The Gladiators responding very well to this barrage of ultimates from Hangzhou. Godspeed, though, is charged up, and he can't wait to get a chance to dig into the back line of the Los Angeles Gladiators here. Raw standing on the payload. Graviton catches Godspeed up. Transcendence, though, now from both sides. The Gladiators looking topped up late into the fight, but amidst the chaos, they lost Raw. Earthshatter comes in. Decay knocked prone on top of the payload. The charge on Hydration to force him away, and Hangzhou Spark, they're the ones this time that had to spend everything.
And the Gladiators make the decision, Mitch, that when the grab plus self-destruct gets nothing, to invest. They know they're going to start to build a little bit towards their ultimates, get an advantage. They use Sound Barrier. They also use Rally. It does not work out in the end. Godspeed already with another grab. He's going to try and launch this one into the wall. As soon as they come around the corner, beautiful play.
The payload gets home in the meantime. No one from the Gladiators can stall it out. And they're happy to spend that grab just to get the point. Now, the Hangzhou Spark, again, despite having gotten this far, still need to finish the map. And they need to do it in 1 minute and 15 seconds. That's good for 2 proper fights, maybe?
Yeah, but the thing is that the Gladiators can use the speed boost, get to the first corner again here. So the payload's coming around. They can probably fight this, force the Spark to invest.
They don't have a rally, though.
Yeah, and then we're in the situation where they try and get that one more fight. But they could invest something like a sound barrier here, and maybe you want to throw self-destruct up.
They're committed. Earthshatter, Kushway knocked down. Neither self-destruct yielding any results. The Gladiators managed to find those pickups here, despite only investing a shatter from Raw's direction. Not a good sign for the Spark, man.
You have no charge on Godspeed. You're not getting close to a grab. This shatter's got to be huge from Gushwei. I mean, that's the only thing they got right now.
And that's the only way they win this map, realistically. 2 support ults is very helpful.
Even then, you still have another fight after this one, right? So
20 seconds remain. It depends how long this fight goes for. This might be Hangzhou's last chance. And they are treating it that way. Just being very careful as they approach this corner, trading a little bit of damage. Hydration's running, though, it means the Los Angeles Gladiators want to fight. They come forward with the sound barrier in response from the Spark. They're also ready to throw some hands. But Hydration goes down first. Kushway trying to charge forward to catch Pingusi, doesn't get himself. Strut gets Godspeed, an important pick, to say the least. Decay is still standing for the Gladiators, so they have that extra source of damage, and he's charged up, ready to rumble. And it looks like the Sparks going to be blasting off again. Great stun, though. Decay is cut down, but baby, all he could do was get that Zarya. Both teams spawn fairly close to the payload right now, but we're in overtime, and the Spark have been pushed off. 3 real estate for the Gladiators, and Godspeed has to come in over the top. He's also knocked away. Kushway drops on and gets a bubble, but it won't last very long. Void was behind him the whole time. And going over towards the Gladiators here. They had to fire back after a very close first, and this series already looking pretty darn good. The last time the Spark played an LA team, it was also close. Let's hope for another 5-map affair.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile. High ground or low ground, T-Mobile has you covered. And by State Farm. Whatever life brings your way, State Farm is here to help life go right.
Both of these teams are trying to close out the week with a W, and it's been a close one so far. The Spark and the Gladiators are all knotted up at 1-1 at the half. What's up, everybody? Malik here with Bryn and Zoe. It's halftime, so you know what that means. We're getting ready to break down the first half. But before we get into anything, I think it's time for some insight. Bryn, you got a little bit of insight for me?
Yeah, a little bit of insights powered by Intel for us today as well. I got a tasty little clip for you. It actually is going to be breaking down kind of one of the things that Hangzhou do particularly well, which is actually spotting in the middle of team fights what they can do to win it. So the first thing I want to point your attention to, Raw, right there. He's got the Earth Shatter, and Gladiators, they recognize that this is the way they're going to be winning the fight. The only way they do so is if Hydration uses the Shield Bash ability, which is an ability of the character he's playing, to kind of disable Gushwei, take away a shield, so they can set up the Earth Shatter, knock them all down, and win the fight. But as we pause it again here, you can see Hydration. He's got to get behind Gushwei's shield. And Gushwei, in the moment, he notices this. He recognizes it. And this is the one thing that Hangzhou are very good at. They're an instinctual team. So Raw's going to be trying to get the Earth Shatter off. Hydration's going to be trying running forwards. And Gushwei just backpedals. He just runs backwards, lets Hydration come into him, and they just focus down Hydration. The Earth Shatter from Raw gets no value whatsoever. And you can see it here in slow motion. Perfect placement here from Hangzhou Spark. This is the one thing that they really do excel at, and it's one of the reasons they managed to take away this first map, because Control as a game mode is quite chaotic, you know, it's all over the place a little bit, and Hangzhou really excel in that kind of environment.
That was dope. It was like bobbing and weaving like a boxer
Exactly.
almost. It was really cool. All right, so, you know, going into this matchup, there was a lot of talk about the Hangzhou Spark and them just spreading themselves too thin when it comes to the rotation. But we've actually seen Gushwei in the game more than just the control map. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I was actually really surprised about that. So far, we've seen Gushwei on those control maps. So we saw him on Nepal, on Ilios, or Busan. And then usually for all the other map types, we had No Smite being on that main tank role. However, this time, they actually stuck with Gushue. So this is going to up his playtime quite a bit. Just to give you like a bit of an idea of how much more No Smite actually played with the team. No Smite is currently sitting on 187 minutes playtime for them, whereas on Gushue's side before this match, it was just 85. So that's quite a big difference, actually.
Yeah, absolutely huge difference, isn't it? And I think I can understand why Hangzhou did this, is because Gushue is actually a Chinese player, and a lot of this squad are Korean. So there's the language barriers there. You know, it's a difficulty in communicating, especially when you move over to the escort maps like we're seeing here on Hollywood. You know, you need a bit more communication. You need to be able to set up your team fights particularly well. You need to be able to call and communicate as to when you're going to be using your ultimas. But generally speaking, I haven't really noticed too much of a difference between when Gushue was playing and when No Smite was playing. I think, honestly, it's a much better look for them, because I was honestly Gushue's biggest fan. From the Overwatch World Cup, we saw this guy, he played for Team China, they came second in the Overwatch World Cup. They were fantastic, and partly because of Gushue's tank play. So I like the way that Hangzhou are going by putting him into the Hollywood match.
Right, and if we're looking at the head-to-head, Gushue's actually got the edge over Roar so far in the game. So he's looking actually pretty good. I hope Hangzhou continues to roll with Gushue and keep him in the game, let him get, you know, the more chemistry with his team, because, you know, No Smite, they were just taking him out, throwing No Smite.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's about it. So right now, it's tied up 1-1. Who you guys giving the edge going into the second half?
I stick with Gladiators.
You stick with
I have to stick with
Gladiators?
Gladiators. I think generally both teams have to be a little bit more conservative, maybe with their ult usage. I think they were a little bit liberal at times, but I think if Gladiators are gonna tidy things up rather, they're gonna get that series.
Yeah, I would have to give the advantage to Gladiators as well moving forward. So Hangzhou, I think they're not looking too hot when it comes to the assault maps as well moving forward. They need to be able to take the next map at least in half to bring it to the map 5. If it goes to map 5, I think Hangzhou has a real good shot of taking it. But for now, Gladiators is where I'm sticking my prediction with.
You guys saying that because we're here in LA and
maybe
purple shirts in the audience?
I'm not gonna lie.
Blizzard Arena, how y'all feeling about this matchup? Is it gonna be Gladiators? All right. Well, the crowd speaks for itself. Anyways, we're gonna get into the second half in just a bit. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it.
They don't just play for a team. They play for every fan, every rival, every moment, every match. And when everyone watching expects the best, they perform with the best.
Well, Matt, I don't think we could ask for much more than this. Maybe if you're a Gladiators fan, you prefer a clean 2-0 into the half, but we have a really back-and-forth series.
I'm happy the Spark showed up today. I know we've done a few of their games thus far, and at times they look like they could contend for like a stage playoff spot, you know, to go deep into the stage playoffs, and at times they've looked really poor. I think you see a little bit of a change though today when they have Gushui in a lot of time. I think Gushui is a player that they can invest in the future. Very aggressive, very mechanically skilled. I think, like Brent said at halftime, though, just needs a little bit more time, with the team to gel.
I mean, we could say the same for Raw as well on the side of the Gladiators. Both have had about the same amount of match days with their respective teams, and both of them like to throw out those Earth Shatters pretty willy-nilly, as we've seen so far. There was a head-to-head looking at their efficiency, but though they have both been centerpiece players because they've both often been involved in those first exchanges of kills or deaths, as it were. It definitely feels like the Spark are trying to target Raw.
All right, let's see if this holds. For the Spark coming out with Rhine on defense. We usually always see the Winston here on defense to prevent against damage-dealing heavy comps. The Gladiators probably going to have a hydration check here on Sombra, see what they're running. They may stay on this when they see, well, let's see, Void going to go and switch over to Tracer. Do they stay on this when they see the right? Or they want to opt into the...
Yes.
Oh, okay, so now we have Decay going over to Widowmaker here. So we will see
So it's not that Gushui's not a fantastic Winston player. He's known for that hero, especially his Primal Rage.
Winston's awesome.
Hangzhou just want to play with this. This composition requires them to play much closer together. Makes them really prime targets for Raw, who wants to drop on top, and Decay will be looking for anyone that gets split off. But Decay also, Widowmaker aficionado, man. He's definitely a hero that we've seen him pilot before.
You don't have a ton of burst damage with this composition, though, from the Gladiators. Like, usually we see, like, instead of Tracer, or maybe with Tracer, you usually have, like, a solo support and a Pharah, because you're not really putting down a ton of damage when they're clumped up in this room. You're really relying on, what, like the Widowmaker to get a pick? Tracer's not going to be able to just dart in there and just get a pick off as Roar gets really low. He has to back out. Oh, doesn't get out with his life.
Already one tick, though.
Yep. But now they'll push onto the point. There's nobody, nothing that they can do to force them off.
Decay just has to back away. You cannot challenge Rhea, especially not in this form. Hydration having been spotted out fairly early on. The Spark are very careful not to really commit to the point too much, but they lost Rhea now. Godsby is forced to back up, and a Pulse Bomb dropped in there by Void. Not a lot of healing, or at least it's happening fairly slowly for the Sparks. So they're taking a while to bandage their wounds before they return to the fight. Looks like a hacked health pack inside that small room. That probably explains it. But Bebe going down to Hydration, who has an EMP and hasn't had to use it yet. This is slow but steady from the Gladiators.
Yeah, and the Gladiators, they want to hold on to this EMP if you can use it. And
this could be dangerous.
Gushui actually charges right into Void. And they're actually
going to ignore him.
They're leaving Gushui there.
Gushui has to drop off the edge of the map to try and get back to the rest of his team. He's just been left out to dry, and he quickly goes over the edge. But the Spark will be without their Reinhardt for the next 8 or so seconds. So Raw can take his time, at least in a sense.
They want a big fight on the point because they want to get something with this EMP. Gushui's coming back.
He's about to return with a shatter.
But they can spread out so far. You're not going to land a huge, like, game-saving shatter here, you would think.
This is not all in from the Gladiators. They are playing for picks with this composition.
I like what the Spark are doing. They're playing actually Rhea on the point. They use the Transcendence here early.
And the rally. They get Void for it.
Pick, though.
Looks like the Spark are really gearing up for a huge engagement, and the Gladiators with their mobility are able to back off and force a lot of those ultimates to be committed. They go for the Transcendence late in the fight, though. It's like they decide to commit when they've already lost a couple players. It's a bit odd.
I wonder, do you stay on this to try and get a usage of the EMP? You do have changes here as Roar uses Minefield. He'll switch off of Wrecking Ball. You do stay with Hydration on Sombra. You want to try and get a usage of this EMP here, deny all the abilities for the Spark. Try and just brawl it out on the point.
Gushui will not be happy being EMP'd, but he's got no choice. He was the only one that actually was EMP'd. Sound barrier from IDK, who wasn't affected by it at all. And because the Gladiators only affect one player with that Sombra ultimate, they end up losing Shaz and this fight.
But Godsby does use his grab. They solo grab Shaz, so that kind of resets that ultimate in terms of where Decay is at as well. So that's actually not bad for the Gladiators, as You did invest the EMP, but you knew you were going to switch off of it anyway. Moving forward, as Hydration plays Brigitte now, you did get a grab usage and a sound barrier, and all you traded was EMP there. Pretty good when you're the Gladiators. And
There's definitely a sense that the Gladiators are feeling like they can get the Spark to force ults.
And at that point, you're fighting from a 0 ult game.
Gladiators now.
Gladiators.
I mean, they're going for the fancy footwork, going for these quick disengages when the Spark try and use defensive ultimates. Speaking of which, they don't have any right now. Babies will be the next to come up. Gushue wanting to land a shadow, thinking about the back line of the Gladiators, but there's bigger fish to fry at this stage. He gets knocked over though, good push in there by Rule, but again, he's not backed up well by the rest of his team. He drops. Rear is desuited, but he can just sit behind Gushue's shield and build that mech back up. Big Goose will harass from the top side. There was Hydration with the whip shot.
I don't think the Gladiators really want to invest into this with Roar down.
Do they though?
I mean, they invest grab, so let's see, the self-destruct there.
That gets Gushue here. Transcendence to no avail from Bebe here. And Raw slowly this time. Slowly! Measured pace. Coming towards the point now. Keeps his shield down until the right time, but he's stunned out of it. Credit to Raw, he actually dropped his shield. He's like, okay, I'm only going to use it when I need it, but it doesn't matter if his shield is up or down. In fact, it's much easier now as Brigitte to stun the Reinhardt.
So next fight, you'll have sound barrier for both teams, but there's nothing teams can really do outside of, like, you'd have to have the shield in the right spot, then rely on a Zarya to hit like a really sick bubble, like in that situation to protect. Like, you know what? Once the grab goes up and you got the stuns coming out on the shields, there's nothing you can do to defend against it. As we see a lot of those combos, I think it's obviously great grab placement, great self-destruct placement, but a lot of it's on the Reinhardts and the Lucios and the Brigittes of the world with the displacement to get those to work.
Big Goose has that sound barrier. Again, he can do a lot of high ground control in this Lucio and force members of the Spark onto the low ground where the Gladiators want them to be. They want this to be an original Colosseum. This is what Big Goose is trying to do right now. Manage that positioning. Sound barrier out to respond to IDKs. And Big Goose is in. The rest of the Gladiators took kind of a step back, and now that's the Transcendence out of Bebe. So both teams are using these defensive ultimates. The Gladiators don't have a Transcendence, so they are being careful in the presence of that ult. And a rally. So Hangzhou have used all three of their support ultimates before anyone dies in the fight, but now Buzzy goes down. Godspeed for the high ground, trades it out. Gushue just isolated on the right-hand side by Los Angeles and forced out of the fight. Godspeed knows the Void's an easy target, but there's so many other Gladiators trained on him that he can't really get involved in the point here. 2 ticks and counting. 90%. Graviton Surge thrown straight in the by Decay, trying to secure this point. 1 out response here, the self-destruct from Void. Actually gets Buzzy, who trying to come in on this Arctic here. Gushue gets onto the point. It's just him with the Earth Shatter. He actually gets Decay and blocks Raw's Shatter in response. This is Bebe time now to come in with a Transcendence to keep this one going. 99.1. Pretty even numbers here on the point, but the Gladiators look like they're getting ahead. See the shielding there from Godspeed, who comes in on the Hammond to try and keep this fight going. And Big Goose has yet another sound barrier ready. 2-in-1 fight. He'll take that happily. Rhea now knocked up away from the point, and that's enough of a window to give the Gladiators the point. Some really interesting fights here, Matt.
The offense very strong for the Gladiators on point A. I think if we see, the Spark complete the map, I don't think they'll come out with the Rhine on defense again. I'd be shocked if the Gladiators come out with the Rhine on defense. They'll probably
this
run.
team?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, we talked about it. The Spark don't really play a ton of DPS. There was damage dealers. If there's one team you probably can get away with it against, I mean, maybe the Spark would just opt into like a Rhine battle here to kick things off. Yeah, maybe something the Gladiators even discussed, right?
We talked about it a lot. That when the Valiant played against the Spark earlier on, you know, in this stage, we commented that it seems as if they felt they were forced into playing Winston in the 3-3 setup, so they wouldn't be forced into like a less mobile composition featuring a Reinhardt and fall prey to Hangzhou's, at the time, tendency to play a lot of damage dealer heroes, and you know, in the same way the Gladiators showed on the attack.
So Roar does come out on Winston on defense. It's the only real no question mark you probably have for the Gladiators. Is I know they do finish the map with 1:03 in the time bank.
Considering how quickly they got point A and how point B was looking with Gushue isolated, it's pretty slow.
So now it's just what do the Spark do? Do they come out, see this? Do they opt for the Rhine composition? Do they opt for something a little bit more damage dealer heavy? Or they could opt into, we saw London opt into a Winston on Winston battle on Volskaya, which is something we usually don't see.
That might have something to do more with, Gesture's preferences in terms of tank hero.
And I think Gushue's preference as a tank is Winston as well. So you'll see the Spark going. And they're going to match up this Winston on Winston matchup as Gushue goes in. He actually almost gets picked off there. He gets like booped around the corner, out of the line of sight to his team.
Fuzzy gives him that repair pack, so he doesn't fall too low.
May wait for that to come off a cooldown before going in again.
Oh yeah. Raw drops in, gets a bubble initially, but actually sort of drops his shield down early, so I don't know how much charge he would have given over to Decay there. Clearly enough for him to laser down the Zenyatta of Bebe. Void again tasked with clearing the high ground, but doesn't really want to opt into a head-to-head battle against Godspeed. Still, the Gladiators managed to put all the pieces together in this team fight and actually not lose anyone. Shaz, nice little cleanup.
And when we saw London play against the Gladiators, and when they were successful on offense, when Roar would go in, instead of peeling for the backline like we just saw Gushue do, he uses the leap to go back towards the supports. Gesture would just jump onto the supports of the Gladiators. They left them free in that match. So we'll see if there's some kind of adjustment here out of the Spark. If they watched any of that match, they were able to make a big impact, London, when they were jumping onto the supports, letting the D.Va deal with protecting the backline.
Well, that's the question. Perhaps, hopefully the Gladiators have gone back and seen that, and less something that the Spark could use against them, something the Gladiators have been able to improve. Rawhide to the bucket for the time being and allows the jump onto his backline by Gushue. This allows Raw to continue to control the high ground. He can just sit up on the top here. Now he's looking for his next entry point. He sees IDK in that backside. Graviton Surge being used, and Gushue getting in there with a Fist of Fury. Oh, nice, that was cute. Raw jumps across and throws a bubble over it. Just putting a biodome over that self-destruct, very cute. Sound barrier now being employed by the Hangzhou Spark, and they still want to push forward. Rhea stunned for a brief moment, but Raw is in the backline. Now he gets turned on. That was something he would have been worried about, but he gets a Primal Rage. Realizing there weren't too many low health characters inside the bunker, he just dips out for a brief moment, but some really classy play from Raw in the last couple moments. Oh, bouncy.
And that time, Gushue didn't go back and protect the supports. He actually dove into the backline. But adjustments out of the LA Gladiators, they're able to keep everybody up. So now you have Transcendent to end rally here, a minute 30 on the clock to go. So Bozaria is getting close to Graviton Surge. If you're the Gladiators, so you have the grab, you have support ult advantage. Maybe you want to just grab here early, get yourself a free fight, allow Void to build towards the self-destruct, Big Goose to get towards the sound
Put
barrier.
Hangzhou down to one more fight. I think they're thinking that too. Look at this aggressive push forward. The Gladiators now realizing they have the initiative, or at least they take it. Either way, it's theirs, and that's the grab. Shaz very quickly into Transcendence. It doesn't save Decay. And now a later Transcendence from Hangzhou. So theirs is layered favorably over the second part of this fight, and they'll use that to gain position. The Gladiators have to respect this. They back up. Void discorded on the high ground, so he can't really stick out for too long. Self-destruct thrown in over the top. Void probably just wanting to re-mech in this case and not trying to get any huge plays or kills. But Big Goose is now missing for the Gladiators. Void lays it out. Very quickly, Raw realizes he has to jump back. He is in Primal Rage, but there are 5 people from Hangzhou looking straight at him. It looks like they might have finally broken through. That aggression from the Gladiators turned against them with the later Transcendence from Bebe.
And Godspeed gets low during the fight, but because Gushue has Primal Rage, you're not really worried about using the repair pack of Brigitte onto the Winston. You just pop Primal, gain all that health. So you start pocketing Godspeed there, letting him just keep that charge, keep going through with the damage as he's able to build up towards another grab. Remember I mentioned they were about even. They both had grab going in that fight. So we'll see. They try and take advantage of Gushue goes over to Reinhardt.
They can absolutely snowball here, the Hangzhou Spark. Graviton Surge, it's big. Rip. Self-destructing over the top, Gushue charging to set it up. Rhea doesn't find anything there, the sound barrier helping. Plus, the Gladiators were knocked out of line of sight, but it doesn't really seem to matter. They are using defensive ultimates aplenty here. Hydration being stunned up. A finish from Godspeed as he tries to chase Void down, who has no mech, so he can't do much at the moment. He does get back inside, but already 2 ticks being claimed by the Spark. 3 minutes 41. They are way ahead right now, Matt. And Void has to go in on his own. The Transcendence a little bit too late to keep him up, and Raw, again, trying to do something about this one, but even through the Transcendence, he was discorded. He went down mighty fast. Gushue charged in, Hydration missing, and that'll be it. Hangzhou Spark get the attacking success as well, and have a lead on time bank to boot. They've got to be happy. A surplus of what appears to be a couple minutes, a minute and 3
for the Gladiators. 3 minutes 26 for the Spark. Big advantage heading into our overtime. Gladiators start off their defense admirably. They use the Winston of Raw very effectively, but just as the Spark get put into last chance territory, they break through. The Gladiators overextend, Matthew.
And it'll be the Spark on D again, so they opt to go with the Reinhardt composition yet again. When the Gladiators saw this last time, they ran the damage-dealing heavy comp. They come out here with the Reinhardt. See if they stay on this, or they see it again and then decide to swap off. So it was pretty successful when they went with the damage dealers.
I mean, the Gladiators don't even open with a Sombra to scout, so they look like they're adamant playing this setup.
To be fair, they probably play this setup because with a minute to go and you run the damage dealing heavy comps, you have to reset your ultimates for the second point.
Take away your potential to snowball into
Yes.
a point V victory.
So if you win this first fight, right, and you take the point, you have that ultimate advantage going into the second one. You lose Roar there, that's tough.
Yeah, you see Decay desperately trying to shield him, keep him alive. Void on the drive-by there, hoping to get that last little bit of extra damage on Gushue. Removed him, but they get Ria's mech either way. Decay hanging out a little bit too long, and Godspeed's able to pick him up, though you see the hydration was sort of shielding his Zarya, but not enough to keep him alive, and it is last chance territory for the Gladiators. The Shu, this time, on the other foot.
The Spark may need to give up a tick here, though. You have some players trickling back from the spawn, and Rhea without a mech.
All of the Spark are in position now. All their players have returned to the fight. 5 seconds left, and then we're into overtime. The Gladiators have to come up with an answer, and soon. Raw was discorded. He backs around the corner for the time being, but Void kind of caught out on the high ground. Yeah, he's going to be desuited first. Usually it's Raw, but it doesn't matter. The result is still the same. The Gladiators have run out of gas here. Big Goose has forced a sound barrier for no one but himself and Decay. Decay is being dealt with by 4 members of the Spark, and Godspeed is enough to deal with Big Goose by the looks. Shaz drops into on the point with the Transcendence, and Decay has to work in from the fringes. He goes for the Graviton Surge. He won't survive, though. It was just Shaz after the Transcendence. It's not enough.
You know what I really love from the Spark today is just how aggressive they're playing. They take that fight at the corner, they just get aggressive right around it. And you can tell when you look at some of the healing stats, we've seen some interesting things in terms of damage dealt and players breaking records left and right. Right now with the Spark, you have Bazzi and Bebe making up about 85% of their overall healing done, which is a crazy amount. I mean, IDK playing Lucio only 5,000 healing throughout this whole first map, the whole map this far. Where on the other side for the LA Gladiators, Big Goose contributing about 25%, which is about 10% more healing for the team. Where you see they're just using the Brigitte to be kind of like, talk about Brig as like an off healer, who's like the main healer really in this composition. With the Repair Pack and Inspire, if you're able to keep the uptime, she's really kind of the main source of healing in this composition.
And these fights have all been quite long. They've dragged out for a while, and the longer the Brigitte gets to swing, the more activations of her Inspire passive she gets, the more healing is given. She's recently been tuned to provide more healing in that case, and IDK is the kind of player that's often their hilltops, like Big Goose is there, trying to play from weird angles, get these boops, get people out of position. A lot of Lucios have been adopting that role as no longer really a centerpiece of that healing package.
I mean, the plus side for Big Goose doing more healing is he's getting the sound barrier much faster than IDK. IDK getting sound barrier every 2 minutes and 10 seconds to 1:45 for Big Goose.
Just stepped out to the plate.
That aggression and speed, though.
So the counter jump there from Raw. Goose just tickling, just testing the waters. But the Gladiators are forced off the bunker. Gushue pops his bubble down after his shield from Godspeed expires. Bazzi might be in trouble here. The Gladiators, they got a sniff of something there. They wanted to try and follow it up, but they were taking a lot of damage themselves. Void at half, and they need the D.Va to be healthy so she can control high ground.
Spartan know they have time here. The issue is that we've seen them get too passive in this situation in the past, as Roar does
he
get
went
dangerously
so
low. He went
deep.
so far.
You saw Pepe was low, and he's given it up.
There's no way he was going to survive that. Not a chance.
It's a capitulation now from the Gladiators map. This map hangs in the balance. And it's just Shaz on the point. Void pushed away. Ria ensuring the D-suit of his opposite number in that Diva role. And that'll do the job. The Hangzhou Spark will take Volskaya. And it wasn't really that close at the end of the day. Again, Raw goes deep. Gladiators try and follow him up, but a couple of those connections just weren't being made. Now the Spark look to try and turn their fortunes around. A bit of an average week 2 for them, but now things seem to be looking up. There's still one more map to come.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile. High ground or low ground, T-Mobile has you covered.
Get a load of this guy, Matt. Gushue, normally subbed in and out over the course of a Spark series, has stayed in, has remained a pillar.
I like it. Look, we showed the graphic early on. I believe, up until this match, like, he was the most prone main tank to die, like, first in a fight.
Yeah, highest first death rate.
No, we talk about fusions, like, we talk about how effective he is as a main tank, right? He dies a lot early. It's just... He needs somebody to be the aggressor for your team. It's not like, the Shock, right? Like, Super just goes in and he starts going crazy. Like, Bumper, same way.
Same
like,
for the Eternal. Cruz had like a large amount of first deaths, and they had a great start to the season.
You need somebody to get the party started, so to speak.
I feel like color scheme, by the way.
Yeah.
Pink and purple, I dig it.
And I feel like with the Spark, now they've been so indecisive and passive that when Gushue plays aggressive, there's no option but to follow him. They have to. I mean, they could opt out to, but you're gonna be out of these series pretty quick. But
what a fitting location for the Gladiators' last chance saloon. It's Route 66. The series hangs in the balance after an underwhelming performance on Volskaya. They've got a lot of ground to make up, and no better place than here.
Look, I mean, you make a change like bringing Decay in for sure for a fan favorite. You have an 0-2 week. It's gonna be a long weekend for the Gladiators and their fans if you lose this. But the Spark, you're like, okay, what's going on? They're playing like in the spawn. They want to play up close here. They want to try and get a few fights to go their way. Nothing going their way right now. But they'll come back and they'll have a good opportunity on defense in the next go.
The only person on the Hangzhou Spark who cannot benefit from Repair Pack is the Brigitte and Buzzy. Took a fair bit of damage early on. I think the Gladiators noticed that and said, oh, well, there's no burst healing. Brig can't burst heal herself. We'll charge her down. And they did exactly that. So they win that first fight. I mean, look at this. Shaz, Transcendence just around the corner. Be very happy with that.
I mean, you know, almost 300 damage amplified with the Discord there. So that's how you see him get to that Transcendence early. Not incredibly early, you know, maybe at 82%. He'll have it for this next fight as the payload makes around the corner here. Big Earl, is the Spark just trying to wait this out, maybe to get a Transcendence of their own.
Big Goose is the man here. To knock someone off of Big Earls and sort of drop them into the Gladiators' waiting arms would be a great way to start this fight. Gladiators are hoping just to sort of provoke a first move from the Spark. So far, not a whole lot. Yeah, Decay just wanting to bait them in. It's like, come fighters. Payload not moving right now, so something has to give here.
Yeah. So Spark, they were waiting for some ultimates. Is now the Gladiators, they're tired of the Spark just hanging out here on top of Big Earls. Trying to take the fight 2 months.
Here's your rotations. Big Goose, they're straight to the back line. He gets caught out though. He was just trying to be a little bit cheeky. The charge away by Raw to get rid of Gushue. Could have worked if there was some follow-up damage. He was outside of the healing radius of the Transcendence, but Raw's Earth Shatter,
nothing.
Not the play. Here's a self-destruct over the top, so the Gladiators are just throwing these ultimates in, and they're getting nothing for any of them.
And the Spark playing this perfectly. They can sit up here on top of Big Earls. Time and time again, they get Gushue Discord. He has to step around the corner as Godspeed rips everybody up. Self-destruct in the sky. There's the pin. It may have been a little early.
Perhaps. Gushue, the knockdown is there. Raw. Ooh, we've seen that one before. The Discord Orb and Godspeed almost full charge. Even a 500 HP character will not stay alive for very long. And the Gladiators, not only, Matt, are they looking really frantic, but they've thrown away their old advantage. Hand over fist, they've just been giving these W's over to the Spark.
And you know, we've talked about some of the crazy decision-making from the Spark over the last, 2 or 3 games. The supports are in the other team's spawn. What's going on? That was really well played there. They did a nice job of just waiting it out. They knew the Gladiators had a little bit of an ult advantage. They played it until it got in their favor, and then they took the fight. By the way, we're already down to a minute. No, you're looking at this fight. If it doesn't work out for the Gladiators, they're going to be in a tough spot.
It's going to be a Taylor 2 grabs in just a moment. Both Zayas need to make the play. Spark to stop the Gladiators in their tracks will be great. They're going to try to do just that. Shaz is down. Unfortunately for the Gladiators, it was a quick fight at least, so they will have a chance to come back and have a proper 6-on-6.
I'm actually stunned by this match. Like, this is one where the Gladiators, like, you were coming in with Decay, you had some, positive moments in the London series. Going up against, like, a Spark team who's reeling right now. The only change they make is Gushue comes in, they play more aggressive.
Matthew, this puts the Gladiators at 1-4 if they lose this map. Almost as, I guess, lackluster an opening as their sort of sister team in the Valiant. Neither LA team finding success here. This is their last chance to prove the doubters wrong. I mean, Bebe, he's waiting to get in with that Transcendence. Decay definitely has a Graviton Surge. That will be the expected exchange. Big Goose, has he gone too far again? Just gets away. Payload contested, it's still held in stasis. There's the Graviton Surge. Straight away, Bebe knows exactly what he has to do. Self-destruct over the top. That was from Hangzhou, like a counter self-destruct. He doesn't find anything either. Gushue jumps up, and there was no one behind his shield to be knocked down. It's just him affected. He gets Raw, or at least Raw was bashed in that fight. And again, the right half of the Gladiators goes down. The namesake, the first casualty. And Godspeed, just from his perch proudly, sends that particle cannon in. And there's nothing the Gladiators can do but look on and realize now what a titanic job stands in front of them to stay in this series.
It's one thing to be aggressive on Lucio. You can't get aggressive a lot, go down low there as Big Goose was up on that high ground. They're forced to use the repair pack to keep him up. And once that happens, the Spark realizes they use the rally, they get aggressive. It forces some ultimates out probably a little bit early there. For the Gladiators, they're not able to kind of dictate the pace there. So the Spark with a very good defensive hold. This is going to have to be crazy for the Gladiators to hold here. With what we've seen from them this far, it does not looking good.
Sink or swim for the Gladiators now, and you thought with 2 fins that would be easier. Perhaps not. Usually they were, we think of Shaz and Big Goose as like the real solid core of this team. A lot of their consistency in our inaugural season actually came from those two, the moments like that, you can see the tendency, Big Goose trying to make a play, trying to make a difference in that backline.
It's the risky part about no Lucio play right now, is that you try and set up a lot of plays with your boops and whatnot. If the team decides to focus you down, you could be in trouble quick. And you know, let's say your Lucio drops, you don't have sound barrier, if they have the ultimate, obviously, but the biggest thing is you lose speed. You lose all ability to disengage. And when you're playing these tanks, which outside of D.Va aren't the most mobile, Zen not mobile, Brigitte not mobile, you don't have the ability to disengage, you're gonna lose a lot of those fights.
Again, not only disengaging, engaging, also rotations. A lot of teams with Reinhardt-based compositions are always trying to outmaneuver their opponents. Without a Lucio, it's not possible. Lucios sometimes play quite brashly, Matt, because they have their own self-healing. They can speed themselves up, but at the end of the day, 200 hit points is all they have to work with. They're as squishy as any other character.
Interesting, so the teleporter coming out from IDK, sending players up to the high ground and then switching off. And you can see at the top of the screen that little golden tick, that's all the payload progress.
That's very clever.
That the Spark need to get to win the map.
When you switch off Symmetra, everything that she puts into the game does disappear, but the teleporter had already been used to great effect. I mean, the Spark just used that to get pole position here. Look at Bebe, not a care in the world. He's just chilling. Very happy there. Glass of cool lemonade by his side. He's enjoying the hot desert sun. And the Hangzhou Spark now. And this pace is going to be brutal. The Gladiators have one chance, one more chance, and they have nothing in terms of ultimates.
Gladiators players on the stage just
this is
looking quite stunned.
This is going to hurt, man. They don't know he's here! Oh, no. That's a two-man shadow. That's probably going to be enough. Decay and Raw caught up there quickly. Hasty bubbles being given out to the Gladiators' front line, but they're held up long enough for the payload to continue to advance. The Gladiators now move to that high ground position. I'm sure the Spark wanted more from that Earth Shadow, but it's definitely going to keep the Gladiators on their toes, keep them on their chin.
Here.
Godspeed will be looking to end the game with that Zaya ultimate now. He's just waiting for the Gladiators to pick down, make sure Void wouldn't eat it up and cancel it with Defensive Matrix. That's why Godspeed's playing a little bit further back. See, half shielded, he needs to bubble himself there. He comes, the engagement straight into the wall. That's very cute. Self-destruct coming straight on down here. Doesn't find anything, but hydration has already fallen. You can see the Raw's trying to swing through that grab and get some damage, but there just wasn't enough at all. Gushue's missing. That often happens first in these fights for the Spark, but it looks like they're running out of gas.
So now you have Decay set up in this high ground that we saw Godspeed was the last time.
Oh, Decay.
He gets caught out, though.
Look at how quickly the Spark will come back into this fight.
This.
Decay overextended to try and get those kills confirmed, and now Void is desuited. No damage mitigation from the D.Va available, and yet they're going to double down. The Spark, no, they're so close to the finish line. Raw walks out, is stunned immediately, then pulled into a Graviton. A lot of crowd control effects being leveraged here by the Spark. The charge away from Raw, desperately trying to isolate more of those characters, but he's caught by Gushue. He comes in on the wrecking ball, and the result is as intended. Miley Cyrus will be proud. A minute 37 left on the clock, and the payload gets home. The Spark follow up an impressive defensive effort with a smooth and slick attack, and they'll take the series 3-1.
What a match from the Spark. You know, the Gladiators, we were talking at the pregame, they're 1-3 coming in. Are they better than that record? I think we both said yes. I think now after this week, you got to examine it a little bit more as the Spark bounce back with a big win. Look, I think a lot of different factors go into the Spark coming out winning today. I think Gushue's aggression and just having to play around that aggression and really speed up the game definitely helped the Spark in this matchup.
The Gladiators came into this match with a modicum of composure. They'd looked pretty solid in those first couple of mats, but things started to fall apart after Volskaya and Route 66. It's definitely going to be something they will look back at and try and figure out where they all went wrong. Frantic and frivolous use of ultimates on their attack really on. Self-destructs being thrown over the edge of Big Earls just to try and find something, and coming out with absolutely nothing. Cheaply lost ultimates.
And you know, Decay has a pretty good game throughout the series. You know, his Zarya performance was very strong, a lot like how we saw yesterday against London. Does not translate into a win yet again here as the Gladiators fall to the Spark.
Well, we're going to head down to the stage now with Emily and quite a dashing main tank.
Thanks, guys. I'm standing here next to Gushue of the Hangzhou Spark. Congratulations! Bang! Now, the first question I wanted to ask was, this was the first time that we saw Gushue playing all 4 maps. So can you maybe explain to us, what was the decision behind that? 这是我们第一次看你4场地图都打了，是为什么呢？
因为之前我沟通不是很好嘛，然后大家也紧张的话就会说很多韩语，我就有点听不懂嘛。然后后面我就开始就也学习了很多韩语嘛，然后基本上大家沟通现在都会很顺畅，我也能听懂他们说什么。
哦，好棒。So in the past, there were some communication issues, and when Gusha would get nervous, sometimes he might not be able to hear what the other players are saying in Korean. But he's been working really hard. He's been improving his Korean, so now it's not really a problem. Now, my second question is, the Spark did suffer through a couple losses, but we did win today. So, how are you feeling, for the rest of the not season, but the stage? 那么我们之前你也知道很遗憾，就是输了几场比赛，但是今天赢了。那么你们有信心吗？你觉得意味着什么？
有信心啊，我们会越来越强大的。谢谢粉丝们的支持，谢谢。
We're very confident. We're gonna do amazing. Thank you so much to the fans, and back to you guys, Matt and Mr. X and Ubers.
There you got it. It's fine. I mean,
there's some people out there that would prefer 2 of me, but
yeah,
like 4. The family
I
out
would
there.
say quite a few of them. I tell you what, I don't blame Gushue for his remark there as well. That gets difficult to not even just communicate, not even just to speak when things are getting hectic, but also to hear. Especially with the rally to me every 3 seconds during the game. There's a lot going on, and then he has to go across languages. There's a heck of a lot to deal with, man. We saw. I really think we saw some very good stuff from Hangzhou in this match. I think conversely, we definitely saw some real low points for the Gladiators, things they definitely have to go back and work on.
I mean, you remember back to Hollywood map number 2, the Spark could have definitely taken that one. So we look at some of the highlights here from Volskaya. I think this was just poor game planning from the Spark to come out on the Reinhardt on defense. I highly doubt we see that again from them in the future, but their offense, very strong. They were able to barrel through the Gladiators, really get that snowball going.
I saw a glimmer of hope there for the Gladiators. They looked like they utilized that Winston on defense quite effectively. There were times we thought, they got the Spark down to just that last push, and they overextended, Matt. They went too far.
I mean, it was Roar towards the end, just trying to make a play. But with how the Spark had played in the past, we've seen them play really passive. You could have maybe waited it out. This one, I expected this map to be much closer.
This was, I'll be honest, this was not good from the Gladiators. Not good at all.
You expected to see more fight from the Gladiators, right? You come out, put up a really good showing. Obviously, the Spark played tremendous today, but a team like the Gladiators made it very far in our playoff last year. They bring in some talent, more talent this year. Go down like this, 0-2 this week, it's tough.
They looked uncertain, Matt. They were very slow when starting a lot of these fights, and as a result, they often found themselves running out of time towards the end of these rounds.
They looked almost like how the Spark looked when they lose their 2 matches last week, just really indecisive. Didn't know when they wanted to get aggressive, didn't know when they wanted to just peel back and disengage. Today, the Spark looked much different. They were just go, go, go from the get-go, and it pays off.
Makes you wonder as well about communication. We talk about this a lot. In Overwatch, there's a lot of moving parts to deal with. But someone who's done very well with difficult communication on his particular roster is our Omen by HP player of the match. I think you know exactly who I'm referring to. Gushue absolutely deserving it today.
Had to be the player of the match. When you come in as the main tank, you're playing the entire game, you're going up against Roar in what quite frankly was a must-win game for the Spark's potential chances in the stage. You need to have a strong performance. I really think that even if the stats don't always back it up, I think just his aggressive play really set the tempo for this team today.
Again, you heard that stat, most first deaths in fights thrown around a heck of a lot, but this is okay. You have to be willing to put your body and life on the line as a main tank player, and Gushue does it better than anyone else.
Ton of damage.
This kind of, we saw him sort of come to the fore as one of the players put forward in China's World Cup offering last year. He shocked the world. Everyone was very impressed with him, and he definitely walked straight into a spot here in the Overwatch League. Man, let's see now where these two teams respectively are after being 16th and 17th.
Yeah, now the Spark moved to 3-3. Still 1 negative in the map win-loss column. And the Gladiators, 1-4, -5 maps. Them and only 1 game separating them and the Valiant, right? The Valiant not having a great start to their season, but we talk about it. The stage 1, it's one thing, but these games start to rack up. You don't have a ton of time in this season. Like that 1-4 start for the Gladiators is going to really hurt as we get towards stage 4 and we're talking about overall season playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost a sixth of their overall games. In other words, 5 games down. They've played much of their season. Big shout out to everybody watching us on Disney XD. Thanks for joining us. Coming up next for those that are sticking around, it's the Los Angeles Valiant. Have a hometown to reclaim, but the Guangzhou Charge will be standing in their way. That's going to be a spicy affair for sure. Stick around.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by Toyota, official North American partner of the Overwatch League. Toyota, let's go places.